So here I am backstage dancing out to my new music that I just got. I thought it was time to, the beginning of the year to refresh the music. So good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are joining us from. I'm Annette Richmond. This is Content Marketing School. And I'm so happy to have my friend and colleague and frequent guest, Gillian Whitney, joining me today to talk about one of our favorite topics. So, Gillian, can you just share a little bit about who you are and what you do for whoever does not know you?
Oh, sure. So I'm excited to be here. So thank you, Annette, for having me and exciting to kick off January. And I just always love coming on your show. So and this is cameras on. So this is a good one. This is a great one. So I love it. So my name is, for anybody who doesn't know me, my name is Gillian Whitney. I am a live stream strategist and business book coach. And so I help people with the power of video and the power of words to build their brand and build their business.
I think that's one thing that we have very much we're kindred spirits in. We're both love words and the written word, and we're writers at heart and all of that. And and I guess that's just one of the many things that makes us friends. So, I think it's so interesting the idea of publishing books. And I know Michelle Griffin was on my show sort of in the fall last year, talking about writing a book and why you should write a book. And but so many people are just kind of they don't know where to start. They have their material, they don't know where to start. Do they find a publisher? I know you and I've talked about this before. Self-publishing no longer has a stigma to it, but I know that that is part of your business now.
Right.
And so I just like to start and say, what are maybe a couple of mistakes or myths that people have? Like if they think they want to write a book and they're like, well, I don't know. And can you give us a few of those that they shouldn't
Sure.
be thinking or doing?
Sure, sure. So, of course, there's kind of different parts to writing a book. There's the actual writing of the book, and that's like a whole thing in itself. So, today we'll kind of talk about you're either writing the book, you're thinking about writing the book, or the book's already written. And then it's kind of like you got that book done and you think, okay, I'm done. I'm just going to go to a publisher and they're going to publish my book and I'm going to kick off my shoes and go to Florida and
And
drink, cocktails. That's
yeah,
not gonna happen. So it's kinda like writing the book, it's just sort of that for I kinda liken it to like you got pregnant, it's like getting pregnant. It's like it's just the beginning is writing the book, and then all of a sudden, now different options are up. And so I don't encourage people to do traditional publishing if we're talking about a business book. And since we're talking, primarily on LinkedIn, YouTube, Instagram, most of us are using a book to basically grow our business, to be more visible. Those are the things, grow our brand. And so, in that light, I would say going with traditional publishers, that's really difficult and that's very hard. Now you need a literary agent. You're going to be talking about years before you get your book out. And you want to get your book done and out into the world, self-publish. And like you said, Annette, there's no longer a stigma. We have tons of people that self-publish books. Seth Godin, who's like the king of marketing, self-publishes books. So it's like we don't have to wait around anymore to get picked that like, oh, a publisher will choose you. Choose yourself, self-publish. Now, you are unique, Annette, and you're one of the few people that, you did everything. Like you self-published, you wrote your book, you just, you took care of all of it. And so that's probably one things that I would talk about is sometimes it truly does take a village to do a book. And unless you're Annette Richmond, most people need help. So it could be you want a book coach with the accountability and the writing and the all the decisions you have to make, because you can kind of mess up and make a wrong decision at the beginning, which could haunt you a long time. So you want to do your due diligence and do your homework before you just slap it up and, get it out there. So there are things, you might want an editor, you might want a proofreader, a book coach. You might want somebody else to do the layout for you, the typesetting and the layout. That's kind of something my husband and I do.
Mhm.
You might want somebody to help you get that book up on a publishing platform like Amazon or Ingram Spark or Draft to Digital. There's lots of different places you might want help. You might want beta readers and a team of people to read your book and give you feedback before you even get to the layout stage. So there's lots of different things. You might want a publicity person. So once your book is out there, now what? How do I get on podcasts and all these different things? So that would be sort of my number one thing, is especially with you, Annette. First of all, you're extremely technical. And, you do your own podcast, you do your own lives, you do your own videos. You're kind of like above everybody else, in terms of tech savviness. Plus also too, you had previously published other books. So when you did your recent book, you were like, okay, been there, done that. For anybody who's doing a book for the very first time, it's overwhelming. There is like so much. You're just like, what does this mean? And should I do this? So those are kind of the things that happen when we go to publish a book. So the first thing I want to tell everybody is there's no right answer for everything. So it just depends. So even just saying, like, here's the most recent book I did. I did this with Tina Jarvett. What size do you want your book to be? What should go on the cover? What should go on the back? Should you have a spine? What should go on the spine? All these things are different. Some people are going to do a book and they're going to choose a trim size of 6x9. Is that what you chose, Annette? 6x9?
Yes, I did.
And that is a traditional size in the United States for trade business books. But if you're over in Europe, it's 5.5 by 8.5. So you have to decide what it is. Plus also too, if you have a really thin book, you want a smaller book. If you have your 400 pages or something, then you might want to go by, 6x9 or something even bigger. So that's what I mean by it just depends what works for you. So that would be the first thing that I would tell people is just know there's not one right answer. It's just what's best for you.
Oh, 100%. And, we've talked about this a lot. And I published my first book. Oh my goodness, it's got to be more than 10 years ago. And at that time, self-publishing was like, oh, you self-published, like, oh,
Shame,
yeah, shame, for shame. And before that, actually, I had tried the whole literary thing. It just didn't work out for me. So but when I published that, Amazon had Kindle Create, but it wasn't what it is now. You had to create it. And I have a husband who knows Photoshop. So he's the one that laid out everything for me the first time I did a book. And then when I did the second one, they had Kindle Create, which right now the Kindle part it's fairly easy, particularly if you've done it before. It does a lot for you. But again, I had done it previously and I went up and while you can do a paperback with Kindle Create, it doesn't quite have the bells and whistles as it does if somebody lays it out for you. And I still had to have my husband lay out the cover. So, it's again, it's something that you have to know. But the thing is too, that I will say, and again, I had learned a lot of this already, what you're talking about, putting it on Amazon, then you have Ingram Spark, then you have with the spine and how many pages do you want? Do you want to have your, your name and the title on the spine of the book? That was something I wanted. So I kept making my book a little bit bigger so that I could get that. But a lot of those things are things that, I had learned on the way over like a decade of doing this. This is like my third book that I did.
Yep.
But if you're a newbie and you don't know where to go, I mean, I think what holds people back a lot of times with many things, podcasting, LinkedIn Lives, publishing a book is they don't know where to start.
Right.
And that's where working with someone like you is essential. I mean, I always recommend you, but there are several people that do, it's kind of a thing now, as self-publishing has become, more prevalent and more respected, more importantly. So what would you say for people that are thinking now? I know you've done a couple of things, and I'm gonna throw some things at you and choose what you think is most important. One thing that you recently talked about on your live about, do you want to be in bookstores? If you could chat a little bit about that. The idea of having your name and the name of the book on the spine. For me, that was a big thing. For some people, it's not. If you could mention that, and I'll think of something else. So start wherever you like.
Okay, so I'll start with the spine.
Okay.
So first of all, let me backtrack in
Okay.
that a lot of times you want to think about, I'm all about easy peasy. That is my brand. That's
Yep.
everything that I do. And so I always recommend with people, do what I did, where just start with the first low hanging fruit. It's like start with a baby book, a mini book. Don't go and write your War and Peace tome that's, 900 pages. It's going to take you 5 years to write. It's like, think about the low hanging fruit. What's a book that's small and I can just go through the experience? So the first book that I did was How to Feel More Comfortable on Camera. It has nothing on the spine because it is only 55 pages. So there's like a cutoff, sort of depending on your trim size of, again, the smaller the book, the better,
Mhm.
the more pages you're
Yeah.
going to get. So that kind of makes sense. So if I had gone with an 8 by 10 of this book, it wouldn't have been a good, it would have been like really silly. But I couldn't even have a spine because I didn't have enough pages. And so for the most part, I really would tell people, don't worry about that. I know you did, Annette, but you were on your third book.
Mhm.
So I think we have to kind of go through the process. So when I wrote this book, I actually just said, I'm going to make it a Kindle book. That's all I decided to do, because Kindle books and paperback or hardback, they're different formats.
Mhm.
And each format has its own way of laying out. So if
Mhm.
you go with a Kindle book, you don't have to quite get as fancy, because that book is what's called reflowable, which means that it's just set up in regular type. And then depending on who's reading your book, if they're on their phone or you're on an iPad or a Kindle or whatever, it's going to change the layout based on the way that the person is reading it. So if I read the book this way, it's going to be one way. If it goes like this, it's going to reformat. If I'm on my Kindle, I might want to bump up the font. I might put it on dark mode. I could put it on green. My fonts will override everything. So it's kind of like a plain text version of your book. And so that's a really easy way to go. So that
Okay.
was my first book. I just said, I'm going to make it a Kindle. And then somebody said, well, aren't you going to do a paperback? And I went, well, I guess I could. And then I did the paperback. So there was like a month difference between, the Kindle went up, I think, in August. And then September, the end of September, the paperback was ready. So that's what you should do, as opposed to, no, I'm going to have my first book. I'm going to have an audio book. I'm going to have hardback, paperback, Kindle book, and I'm also going to have Whisper Sync, and, I'm going to have it out on like Ingram Spark and Amazon and Drafted Digital. And I want it in Overdrive in libraries. Like, that's a huge commitment.
Yeah.
So don't do that. Don't do that to yourself. Start small, because you can always add those later. You can
No,
always add
no,
those
no.
later.
No, I love that you said that, because it is true. You start with Kindle. One of my books is only on Kindle. I mean, it's only on Kindle. And and when you start that way, and I love that idea, but I also want to also jump in on what you said about sort of going with what you had. Now, I talked to you when I was thinking of writing this book, and everybody's talking about it, and you're like, you have all the content, you should do it. And so that's something that helped me put my book together pretty quickly, because I was able to pull in, you know, make transcripts and chapters from videos and things like that. So if you have a lot of content, maybe it's good to sort of, catalog your content or put it
Repurpose.
in like a Google Doc or something like that, and then just pull from there.
Absolutely, absolutely. So, but I would say that there are decisions you need to make up front about things of your book, thinking long term. So, one of the things I remember you and I have talked about is your ISBN. So, for anybody who's not familiar with that, that's an international standard book number, and that's used of think of it like the vehicle ID on your car. It's like every book
Yeah.
has its own ISBN. Now, what's interesting is the ISBN goes with the format. So if I have a paperback book, I get one number. If I make a hardback, I have to get another ISBN. If I have an audio book, I have to do another one. So even though it's the same book, it's according to format. But what's interesting is that the ISBN doesn't go with the platform. So if I have this paperback and I have my own, so let me backstep because
Okay.
this is what a lot of us do. And I did it. I'll raise my hand for this very first book. I was like, I don't even know if anybody's going to like it. I didn't even know if it would sell. I didn't even know if I'd ever hit the publish button. I was just kind of like, okay, I'm going to make a book. Maybe I'll tell people about it. Maybe I won't. I don't know. So I just was experimenting. And of course, I made my husband go learn, layout and desktop and layout and typesetting so he could do my book and, everything involved. So at the time, I did not want to invest in an ISBN number. And Amazon will say, hey, we're cool with that. We'll give you a free one. And I actually tell people if you are a first time author, it's okay. It's okay to take the ISBN number that Kindle gives you because maybe you're ever going to do that one book ever in your whole life. So to go out and buy an ISBN number, which is I think 125, or
Mhm.
you can buy like a pack of 10 and it's like 350 or something like that. That's a big commitment because you might be like, I don't know if I have all that with me. So you can get a free one from Amazon, but it stays on Amazon. So that's the one thing that you have to think about. So with me, I just did a Kindle. Now, here's the interesting thing. You do not need an ISBN for Amazon for your Kindle book. Ebooks don't need an ISBN number, but they might on another platform. So if you
Mhm.
go off to use Ingram Spark with your ebook, wouldn't recommend it. I'd actually recommend Draft to Digital for your ebook. When you get to Draft to Digital, they'll say, what's your ISBN number? So I actually did that recently and I had to go buy one for my book because I didn't have one. So that's
Mhm.
interesting. But I can't take this one now and, take that version off because I used Amazon's. So that's the
Mhm.
tricky thing. You have to decide, do I want to use Amazon's and stay with Amazon? So the lure is it's free. Or you say, well, I want to keep my options open for other platforms. So that's a number one decision you need to make up front.
Yeah, yeah. I mean, I did that initially, and I am a big believer in that. So I have purchased my own ISBNs, and I think the place you get them, it's Bowker, right? Bowker.
Yeah,
That's kind of
yeah, if
the
you're in
place.
it's country specific, and a lot of
Okay.
people don't know this. It's country specific to where you live. So if like when I was living in Israel, I even though I was an American, I would have to go to Israel and get an ISBN. So that's kinda
Oh, okay.
interesting. It has to be where you live. So, in the United States, we go with Bowker. It also serves Australia for some strange reason. So
Okay.
Australia and the United States are Bowker. If you're in the UK, it's Nielsen's, and then the other countries you'd have to look up. So it's kind of now here. If you're Canadian, which I am, but I don't live there. If you're in Canada, they're free. So it's like
Wow.
we
Just
need
like
to all go to
healthcare, right?
Canada.
Wow. Yeah, but I think that is really tricky, and I'm glad that you brought that up because I think that is something to think about. And personally, I like to plan ahead. To me, $125 is not that much to invest, and maybe if it prompts you to actually get that book up there, well, maybe that might be a good thing too.
Yes. And I'll just let everybody know that, sorry, popped out of my head.
So, I one of the things that I want to maybe you can talk a little bit about, because I know that you did this not initially, but you have your books in a series, and that's
Mm.
something that I want to talk about. And then if you could just jump in and share a little bit about like the author page on Amazon, because I think that's something people are not aware of.
Oh yeah, that's that take advantage of that. That's like having an Amazon profile. It's like how you have your LinkedIn profile, more like a company page really, but it's like it shows who you are and it links all your businesses together. Plus if you do podcasts like we do, you can
Yep.
have your podcast there. So it's a way for people to see other things. So I got this idea with my kind of one of my most recent books, which was about how to write a book, and I thought, I already knew I was going to write a second book and a third book. I knew I was going to have it as a series. So I decided I'd go ahead and call it the Easy Peasy Book Series. And then I decided I would put them on Amazon as a series. And when you actually go to Amazon, you'll see it's a clickable link in the title field. And then it clicks over, and then you get a series page, which would show all the related books. And I think you can even, bundle and stuff like that. Now, I only have the first book done. So I'm looking at doing the second book in either February or March. And I'll add that. And so you can start with just one. So that's nice. If you know that there's going to be other books, you can start with that. And you have the choice of having them ordered. So in sequential ordered, or just part of a series, meaning it doesn't matter the
Oh,
order you read them in.
okay.
So I actually decided to go for that one
Mhm.
because I thought that made sense, because my next one's going to be about publishing. So maybe you've already written your book and you don't need to read about writing a book, but you just want to jump into publishing. So I didn't want to have them in order. So, and then that way, if I could change my mind, my next book might not be about publishing. I might do this one instead. Then I'm not kind of hedged in.
So my question then is, can you do a series after the fact? Like, could I decide
Yes.
now that I'm
Yeah.
going to make the book that I have part of a series on digital or something like that?
Yes, you can do it now. You can do it now.
Okay.
So you can add it now. And if you had books on pre-order, so that's an interesting thing people wonder about. Can you do a pre-order with Amazon? You can do a Kindle pre-order, so for the ebook, but you can't do a Kindle. You can't do a pre-order for the paperback or hardback. So not yet. So hopefully one day that will come, but not right now. But if you have a pre-order, you could add that to the series as well. But I wouldn't recommend it because, if your book's not written, it's, yeah, you could do that, but it's like now you're locked in and so many things can go wrong with the pre-order. So my actual advice is I've used pre-order twice. I like it. I don't do it until the book is absolutely done up on Amazon. And I know that, okay, I don't want to release it for another 3 weeks. So I'll put it on pre-order. Some people, you can actually put a book on pre-order for like a year. So you could say, oh, I'm going to do the second book on maybe you're going to do a follow-up book, Annette, on like live streaming, right? To go in your video
You
series, right?
guessed it.
There you go. There you go. I should write the foreword. So anyways, if you do a live streaming book, you might say, well, I'll do that next August. And you could actually go ahead and pop up the cover and put up the pre-order. But if you don't make it, there's lots of penalties. So
Yeah.
I, I,
Oh,
I
okay.
don't recommend it.
No, well, that's good to know. I actually know a communication coach in London, Susie Ashfield, who is like so funny and smart, and she has a book coming out, and it's available now on Amazon for pre-order, and it's not coming out until May, I think.
Mm,
But she is going. She's working with a publisher and everything, so that's like a whole other level.
right.
But I noticed that. I noticed that. So I just want to share your um LinkedIn profile so people can see you, people that are watching this. If you're listening on the podcast, her LinkedIn profile is just her name, Gillian Whitney, so you can just look for it that way. And I want to say, are you open to connecting with people?
Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm happy to, connect with anybody and give people advice and, answer questions or whatever. If you want, I also do, like, a discovery call if you just wanna kinda, can we just chat and get to know each other? I'm very good about that stuff too.
Yeah, I love that. And I want to mention also that, like me, and I'm just giving people a peek on that, like me, you are also now doing solo lives, which is
Mm,
something that we both kind of started recently. We still love to have guests, both of us, but doing those and the lives that you do solo are primarily about like publishing, right?
absolutely, because here's what I look at them as. It forces me to write. Because if I prepare for my live,
Hmm.
then that content I can repurpose, and then now I can put in my next book. So, for instance, I did a live this week talking about bookstores,
Hmm.
and that's a really important thing. So, I wanted to get my thoughts all orderly. I even missed one or two things that I thought, oh, I forgot to mention that. But that always happens, but I can
Yeah.
add that in. And it's a good way to help you structure your content. So, I remember once I spoke with somebody and they wanted to do a whole book and they were live streaming and they said, I don't have any ideas for live streaming. And I said, okay, what's your book about? And their book was about blah, 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 blah. So I said, well, you could literally make an outline and every time you go live, you do another chapter. And it's like you do 10 lives, you've got 10 chapters for your book. So it's just a really good way to, number one, you're giving value, so you're doing a structured live, and that's me. Like, I probably would not be a good person to go on a live and just say, "Hey, y'all, let's chat." I could not do that for 30 minutes, just sitting, "Hey, Frank, hey, Sarah."
Yeah.
I can't do that kind of stuff. So, it's the teacher in me wants to say, "If people are gonna show up, I'm gonna give some value, and then later I can repurpose that value and put it in my next book."
Yeah, when it's interesting you would say that because when I did my book, I had created some modules for a course I was working on, and so I was able to get the transcripts that became the basis for a chapter, and it's very easy to take, or I should say, relatively easy, especially if you work with like ChatGPT or something, to take your transcript from a video or an audio and then turn that into a chapter of the book. So Jillian, we are right down like to the wire now, and time always goes by so fast when we're hanging out together. It's so much fun. It's like I could do this all the time. And it's one thing I just want to throw in too, because you mentioned about the whole teaching. Now the new audio events that we have both kind of embraced the platform, you
Mhm.
can kind of do that with the new audio event because you can do half screen and you can put some information up there. Because I did an audio event like that myself recently, and you can kind of use it as a teaching platform as well, which I think is kind of cool. So as we are actually at the last few minutes, seconds, I always like to ask all of my guests for any final thoughts. I learned to picked up a couple things today, and I feel like I kind of know a little bit, but I know more now that you would like to share that I haven't asked you and we haven't discussed.
Well, with regards to publishing for first-time authors, the biggest thing that I would clarify to everybody or let everybody know is publishing takes a lot longer than you think. And so for you to just pick a date and just say, "Oh, I'm gonna launch my book on March 1st," and you haven't even written your book, you're not in the layout stage or anything like that, don't do that to yourself because you're putting so much stress on yourself. So until, just know that it's gonna take time for every step of the process. Editors are not gonna just sit there and do your book the same day. They have things, your layout people has things. Amazon takes its sweet time
Yeah.
reviewing your book and sending, and you want to get a proof because if you want to see what that book looks like. I have yet ever had a proof the first time round. I had to have two or three proofs. They all take time, shipping time, printing time. Everything takes time. So don't just set an arbitrary date. It's like you have to be realistic. You might say summer, spring, something like that. That's fine. But just saying, oh, I want to launch on, May 1st. don't do that to yourself.
Yeah, and one thing that I will add about working with a book coach, an author coach, someone to, a publisher like you, because you do that as well, is you don't know what you don't know.
Yep.
And that, I think, is a hindrance for people in many, many avenues, publishing a book, podcasting, etc. You don't know what you don't know, and so you could save yourself a lot of time and headaches by working with a pro. So, my dear friend Gillian, it's such a treat to have you with me, and I'm kind of sad to say goodbye, but thanks to everyone who has joined us. I see you in the audience, but we're just, wanting to share as much knowledge from Gillian as we could possibly do today. So thanks so much for joining us, and have a great rest of your day.
Bye, everybody.